Hey everybody, Gisele Grenier here. So in this video lesson, we're going to be painting a little seascape, but we're only going to be using red. So what I want to do is I want to give you some tips on how to approach this, because it's likely that you're not using the same paint that I am, and you're going to have to refer on to exercises done in previous videos. So one thing we're going to do is we're going to be painting basically a red seascape. Now you can basically watch the whole video and then just follow my format, or go to a website like Pixabay, or find what's the other one, Pexels. Find a seascape that you like, take it, download it, and even on your phone, what you can do is you can convert it to black and white, which will make it much easier to paint it red instead of trying to look at a seascape with blues and purples and greens and all that stuff and try to convert it over. So what we're going to do is we're going to go with the questions that we ask when approaching a painting. I'm painting this completely freestyle from a memory in my brain of a seascape from my last trip to the Bahamas. So what are we going to do? We're going to be painting it red. So really the idea of asking what hue, what color is it, we know it's red. Okay, so we'll look at our color wheel. Of the color wheel you've prepared for the paint that you already have. If you haven't done any of these exercises, you may want to go back a few videos to take a look at them. Otherwise, you can just follow along. So with my particular color wheel, I have permanent alizarin crimson, naphthol red light as my reds. A neutral red, a red that leans towards blue, and a red that leans towards orange. But in case you don't have these paints, what to do is look at just the color. And we already talked about, not taking paint at its face value by, what's inside here. You need to put it on paper, add a bit of white to see its true underlying color. You can use craft paint. So the Americana True Red, phenomenal for that. What's the other one? Oh, naphthol as hue will also work. Oh, Decor Media Fluid Acrylics Primary Magenta would also work. Pearl Red will also work. So just take a look. What you want is you want a red that leans towards blue and a red that leans towards orange, and even a neutral red if you have that. If you don't have the other two, if you have just a neutral red, because then what you can do is take it and then you can shift it. So by taking, the exercise of All About Red, you can take a look at this with the chart that you would have done. Again, if you haven't done this, go back a few videos. Take a look at which colors to you are most pleasing. And myself, I really like the alizarin crimson and naphthol red light because it's in my palette, so I really like that. Now, if you don't have alizarin crimson, you can turn around and choose like a quinacridone violet, which is PR 122. You can use a red violet, but that's really more on the purple side. It's not a red. That's PV19. That's not a red. So I'm going to take that out. But quinacridone violet is a nice one, PR 122, because that you can use. Well, if we just take a look, they look similar here. Here's the quin violet here. So here's a quin violet and the alizarin crimson. So as a whole, they look pretty similar. This one has more white in it, but as a face value here, they look pretty similar. Okay, so we know what we're going to do with a red. We're going with red. We're going with a red that leans towards blue, a red that leans towards orange, or a neutral red, which then you can shift with adding orange or adding blue. It's easier if you just have the two paints. Then we're going to turn on the intensity, the vibrancy of the paint. And we're not going to worry too much about that, because what I want to focus on in this lesson is values, because we know without values, then forget it. The how to shift colors the right way is useful if you only have one red paint. So for the values, the lightness or darkness of a color, that's what we're going to focus on. And where you're going to find this a little bit easier is that we're not going to go heavy on the darks. So we're not going to do anything to the paint to make it darker. We're only going to work with values working it lighter. So just to make things easier, I know I'm going to use permanent alizarin crimson. I know I'm going to use naphthol red light, and I know I'm going to use titanium white. In saying that, if I need to darken it a little bit, if I was just using a regular paint, I could, go with a little bit of blue if I needed to. So I'm going to use these paints on there. I'm also going to pull out a little bit of not that gesso, my little tomato. this gesso. I'm going to use a DecoArt chalky gesso because, my friends, I was intentionally going to start working on in a journal and pick a journal that's got, you know, like a plain page, and I had a map of the Bahamas. I was going to do the seascape in there and have it show through. I mean, there's a ton of different backgrounds that I've already created in this. The Book of Background series is helpful for that. Then I turned around and said, no, I want to work on something really interesting. So this is stuff I picked up from Lee Valley. Now, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I've got my phone here. Kyogi pine. They are planed sheets of pine, paper thin. It's wood paper. This is all wood. It's not you know, plastic or anything. It's actual wood. And I've got a whole description. LeeValley.com is where you can find it, and I'll put the information in the description below. And I know a lot of people don't read the description, so I'm just going to quickly word this. You can skip ahead if you don't want to listen to this. Made of thin paper-like slices of pine, these Japanese pads not only have the unmistakable look, feel, and even the smell of natural wood, but they also have a unique story about how they came to be. Over 40% of Japan's woodlands are now cultivated, requiring regular thinning to maintain their ecological health. As Japan's timber industry declines, these products put harvested wood to good use, bringing needed revenue for sustainable forestry management while helping to preserve a disappearing traditional craft. Okay, so I'm going to be, and they have it in two sizes. Now, I'm not making any money from for promoting. I'm not really promoting, but just using this. But it's beautiful, and you can see the grain. It's a very similar grain, and it gets darker and darker. And as oxygen hits this, it does take on a really nice dark feel to it. So I'm going to, this one's torn, so I'm going to use, these are hard to, okay, let's try that again. And I'm going to be using the gesso to make it a little bit stronger. And these pieces here, I'm going to be all use it in jewelry. Joe and I are working on something, dog tags, making dog tags. We're going to take wood burn a dog's information on there, then do resin, and we're going to put it on Mia for testing at the kennel. To see if it works, to see if it lasts. All right, put you away. Okay, I'm going to be actually doing this right on my palette paper. And I put my paint right here. And I kind of like this torn look about it. I won't be able to tear, no, I won't be able to tear that, but I probably could tear. It's a straight tear, it's not a crooked tear. Okay, so that one's not working so much. So I like that. This is so soft. So the DecoArt, the DecoArt chalky gesso is fairly thin, which is why I like it. And I'm only going to be using soft brushes on this, not the that number 8 bright. I can gesso the back, which will make it stronger. I'm just going to gesso the front though. And some of you may say, well, why? You're going to cover the grain. It's all personal. Oh, and I have the window open, so hopefully the construction people are going to be starting after I finish doing the video. I can turn around and do this, and I can wipe some back. Ooh, what that is. I can wipe some back with baby wipe. I just want to layer on there, because when we're working with red, what color do you see there? Kind of like a brown, right? A creamy. That's going to show through the, and I get baby wipe. That's going to show through. Ugh, sorry. I tried not to hit the microphone. That's going to show through the paint, and I don't want to change the color. So I just want to put a very thin, whoops, it ripped. I just wanted to try doing this. See? Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that gorgeous? And then you can frame this if you want, or put it mounted. This would be nice to actually mounted. There we go. That's what I was going for. And it just takes a few, oh, the camera's shaking, sorry. It just takes a few minutes to dry. And then you can turn around and you can do the back as well. I would avoid using a heat gun. Hair blower is fine if you hold it, you know, in the corners. But a heat gun, no, in case you might burn this. This is nice and stiff now. Alrighty, so I'm going to clean up this area. And I'm going to put a layer on the back. And then we come back, we'll start painting the seascape. Now, the goal for this, we've already talked about the colors. The actual painting time of this little seascape, maybe 10 minutes. But with my explanation, it's going to be a bit longer, but we're going to take about 10 minutes to do this. All right, so all ready. Now I'll put the paint on the back. So that was 2 layers of the gesso. That's 1 layer. See the difference? Now, I just noticed oceans run this way, so this doesn't make sense. So I'm going to turn it this way. So I'm going to might as well do that. So I'm going to run it like that. So now that's a nice little size. And I forgot to mention, with using naphtha, well, for me, using naphtha red light, red that leans towards orange, permanent alizarin crimson that leans towards the blue, and I'm using the Decor Traditions for this, so you can use the Americana, the fluid acrylics, you know, whatever you want, just as long as you know where it leans on the color wheel, that these two themselves will also act for value changes. So if I need to darken naphtha red light a bit, I can use you know, permanent alizarin crimson because it is much darker. Okay, we'll go on through the painting so you'll see where it's going. And I always like keeping my paints out set up so I know exactly where they go. And this is great for beginners too, because that way you'll know your 2 greens, 2 reds, and as you go through the videos, you'll see what you need to use. Oh, and I know I'm going to get asked this. That's the quinacridone violet, the PR 122 quinacridone violet. So it's very, very close. So here's your pop quiz for this video. If I have permanent alizarin crimson here, which is PR 177, and this is quinacridone violet, PR 122, they look similar this way. What's the way to test what the true underlying color is? So let me know in the comments below. All right, let's get going. I think we could do this in 10 minutes. I think so. So let me flip this over. Oh, let me turn my phone off. So we've got our, you know, paint down. So what we want to do is, we can do this with a pencil, and I don't, oh my God, I don't have one. I'm going to get a thinner brush. We just want to establish a horizon line. Now I can use this as my horizon line if I don't want a lot of ocean water coming in. I'm going to use the alizarin crimson for this. And if you get stuck, I'm not going to use a lot of water. If you get stuck, just use a ruler to measure that off. And I don't want to use a lot of water because it'll make the wood curl. A hint that you can, here's a tip. If you have trouble painting, converting taking a photograph and, you know, basically changing it to a completely different color that's really bizarre, take your photograph and convert it to black and white. That will help you. That will help you. So I'm just going to, oh, I need a bit of water. Hey, if I don't want to use water, what can I use? Matte medium. Silly girl. That'll help the paint flow just a little bit easier. You can use extender as well. My extender for the Traditions is very thin in consistency. There we go. Very thin in consistency, and it'll make the paper curl. And this is another thing that you can use to work with the values. See, I didn't change the actual color. I didn't add white. I'm just using medium. I'm going to have to shut the window. And see how it's getting lighter? For me, I'm going to put a bit more paint in there. You need dark to show light and light to show dark. So let's get that in there. Okay, you can already tell it's water. Rinse my brush. Now we're going to go to the naphtha red light. Now, why would you think, usually seascapes, what's in the sky gets reflected in the water. That's not what we're going for here. We're going for work with the color red. But why do you think I would use naphthol red light in the sky? Pop quiz number 2. Why would you think I would use naphthol red light, a red that leans towards orange? Why would I use that in the sky? All right. And there's a pack of kids coming. I'm going to shut the window. Hold on a sec. Okay, so I just shut the studio window. Sorry about that. It's just so nice getting some fresh air in here. Okay, I'm going to go with naphthol red light pure with the medium. And I'm going to start up here. Not adding any water. Now, if you're working in a journal, that's fine. I'm going to take a more medium than that. There we go. The medium is nice too with not only with extending the drying time of the paint, but it adds a little bit of texture in there too. So pure alizarin crimson on the bottom and pure naphthol red light on the top. And I'm thinking without the talking, this should be able to be done in under 10 minutes. Okay. There we go. Nice and dark, eh? Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush. So that's a big brush I'm using. I'm going to go back to the little brush, and I'm going to take the alizarin crimson permanent. Now I'm going to go with a little bit of white. Now we have to look up values. So with the hue, our typical question to hue, we're going with red. With the intensity, that doesn't really matter because we're not working on intensity here. We're primarily working with red and values. The shifting on the color wheel, we have a red that leans towards blue and a red that leans towards orange. And then the most important question of everything I teach in painting is the values. So we need to lighten the value of that alizarin crimson because we want to start putting in some ripples. And this doesn't really make that much of a difference. Okay, so let's add more white. As you start painting, you'll start taking white and then adding the crimson to that because you'll know exactly how much you have to put in. So I'm just kind of zigzagging across like that. I'm going to blot my brush. I'm not going to put it in water. I'm going to pick up just titanium, or the titanium white pure, and go right on top of the areas, but don't cover everything. So we're working wet on wet. Pick up a little bit thicker paint. Soften it up at the front. Like that. There we go. Is that, oh, this is crooked. I'm looking, I painted that crooked. The horizon light straight, the paper's crooked. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry a bit. Now also, if you like the thick waves, go with using gesso, a thicker gesso. That'll work really nice. I'm gonna rinse that brush, put that brush aside. Now, if you're working in a journal, a good brush to use would be like not that big, like a nice little bristle brush. The number 8 bristle bright if you're working big. The little one might be good. This is too delicate, so I'm going to go with a little bristle round brush. I'm going to try that one too. Synthetics, you don't get that nice airy feeling, so I'm going to try with this one first. And I'm going to do first with the paint, and I'm going to go with the gesso. My Traditions paints is very, very fluid. And I'm looking at, oh, this is actually kind of nice. Okay. And I'm just working quite quickly. And all I'm doing is doing this. Up, down, until I run out of paint. As I'm running out of paint, I'm going higher and higher and higher. Because this is going to create values in the clouds. Light, and then more white, more white, more white, more white. And you're going to repeat this. Load the brush, get the paint in there, remove the excess, wait for that to dry, come back in and go back over now, but don't go over the same spot. Keep moving, and don't, another way you can do it is upside down or even sideways. You don't want to get into a pattern of clouds that are like that. This part here takes, I would say, the longest. Then on the bottom, I'm just going to go a bit horizontal just to fade that in to the sky. Okay. And now let me try it with the gesso. Oh my goodness. Now this is the gesso that I have. That's the thick gesso. So what I did is I let it evaporate. Make it nice and thick. I love painting with gesso. Okay, right here. And I'm just going to kind of go round and round. I'm turning the brush because it's putting really, really thick pockets of paint on there. And as you run out of paint, work it down. Don't cover everything. Okay, I'm going to wipe the brush. And I'm just going to fade that down. And in a journal, you can really scrub this hard. I have to be careful because of this wood paper. Okay, go back in a bit more paint. And depending on how you feel about wet on wet painting or wet on dry, you can choose to let this dry or just start painting right away. And just bring that in. Okay, so that gets that primarily done. I'm going to rinse that brush. I won't need that brush. And I'm going to go, I wonder if I could do it with this one. No, I'm going to go with a small brush, a tiny, tiny brush. Little brush with water. Just to bring it to a nice point. And just going to now zigzag. So these are some of the low floating clouds. And just add a little bit more texture here. A bit more water than that. Nice soft above the clouds. Okay, can take a little bit more paint. And now just come in just on the edge. So always keeping the tip of the brush at the top. Softening up the bottom. So you can see those nice values in there. Okay. I'm just going to bring that up a little bit more. The hardest thing with clouds is developing a pattern. You tend to develop a pattern, you know, like this. So that's one thing that you just, it takes a little bit of work. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the previous layer and I'm using that as my guide. So I don't develop that pattern. You see, everything is with the reds, and this cloud, the paint is showing through. Now, if you don't like your clouds rough like that, while it's still wet, you can take your brush and just blend it at the bottom. I want my clouds to have a lot of energy to them. Like that. I'm not liking this one though. Bring that up a bit. You can go as high as you want, to be honest with you. And so it's not leading out into the painting. Let's put something a little bit higher and have it come down. Like that. There we go. And the thicker the paint that you put in the front, it just creates all those extra layers. Like that. You can go as high as you want. Chaos jumped in the table. I had to stop for a second, just waiting for it to jump on the table again. And this is all subjective, how you want to do this. It's completely up to you. You can make them as fluffy as you want, as soft as you want. There we go. And you can turn around too, and now take some more gesso if need be, and really punch in some of those waves. Here we go. So here's a little seascape that's done in red paint. How easy was that? So what happens if you put all your, at this point you can stop and let it dry and then you're done. But what happens now if you had done this and let's say you put too much white paint in there, you let it completely dry, you come back with your red, add some red in here, let that dry, then come back and put in a bit more clouds. And there you go. But you want to make sure that you use the CAD red light in here. Okay. And as it dries, you'll start seeing some of that paint showing through. You can come in and you can add more cloud formations as you go. Just make sure that you leave some nice pockets in there so you're not covering everything up. And that's it. So if you picture this nicely framed, that's driving me crazy, that angle there. I may end up trying to cut that, but this paper's gonna be nice and thick now. That's it. You just let it dry. What else you can do to add strength to it, so even let's say you're painting on thin watercolor paper, just add a layer of matte medium over it, or decoupage medium, or even varnish, and you'll be good to go on that. I just want to add a little bit of red to show you how to cover that up. So if you just want to put a pocket, a little bit of red in there. See how it just builds that in? Work this part really soft though. See, this is where your values come in. Oh, there go the weenie dogs. There we go. See how that really softens that up? Clouds, believe it or not, are one of the hardest things to paint for a lot of people because, you know, people look at clouds like this. It's the eyes that naturally start building up the patterns. Then you can come in with the gesso, if need be, and with everything dry, and then just come in and add the white to the tops. All right. So there we go. I hope that you enjoyed this. And if you are watching this on YouTube, you can post your answers to the two pop questions in the comments below. But what I'd like you to do, and if you're watching this in my Facebook group or the community or on my Facebook page, you guys are okay. Take a picture of what you've done and then head on over to the community Facebook group or the Facebook page. Links are below in the description, and post pictures there of your little painting and then any aha moments you had or questions or comments or any difficulties that you had, so we can jump in, help you and support you in moving forward. Alrighty, so I'm all done. So this ends our analysis of the color red, and until I see you in the next lesson, stay inspired.